What up, apes? Reject all other podcasts and return to Monkey immediately. I've spent the last 2 hours listening to Joe Rogan talk, and I feel like a less evolved life form already. You guys are listening to Super Despair World, the world's #1 anti-podcast. Everyone who does this for a living is not going to see the kingdom of heaven. There's no redemption for any of us. I hate all other podcasters, but there's hope. There's hope for a select few who have signed up for the following financial opportunities.
Let's go monkey mode.
Yeah.
Jump on the Patreon at patreon.com/superdespairworld. And you can join that for free or donate a sinister $6 to get access to our bonus episodes, which are real fire. There is a $2 tip jar if you want to join the Discord with a bunch of really like-minded apes. You could be swinging on vines tomorrow or today. If you so choose. We also have a merch store, merch.superdespairworld.com, where you can get some stickers. If you like the episode art, which you should because it fucking rules, get on there and get some stickers. A few people already have, and they're loving it. Their lives are infinitely better for getting in on that thing.
They're better human beings and better monkeys than all of you.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't want to do any of that shit, yeah, that's fine. I get it. Just don't. And just listen to the show, because you're in for another knee slapper. We got a good one lined up for you today, folks.
Yeah, and for a limited time only, the amount of dollars you give us on Patreon also aligns with how many bananas you'll get in return. So get on top of that now if you want a nice fresh bundle of those.
Oh yeah, we got all the best. The Cavendish is out, and we're peeling them up, baby. Get some bananas. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, I was doing some research for this episode, and it's how it always goes. It's drudging through some of the worst stuff on the internet. But today I had a rare opportunity. I took my dogs on the first walk of the new year. The weather's been very cold and fucking wintry as shit for a very long time. But today it was nice, and they got a bunch of new colors, and I feel like a whole complete person. I feel like less of a podcaster because I went outside and I touched some grass and I walked the dogs and I got a bit of exercise, and I feel ready for the journey ahead of us today.
Fuck yeah. I mean, it's getting nicer here too. So, if you're thinking about touching grass and you're able to, I highly recommend it. And you can listen to this show while you touch grass. They have headphones, they have smartphones. They have all sorts of phones.
I don't know if listening to a podcast, even the world's only anti-podcast, which we are, I don't know if that negates the value of touching grass, but maybe, I don't know, try it out and write to us. Let us know what you get out of that experience.
I don't think it does, as long as the podcast is good. So if it's ours, it's fine. If it's something else, then
if it's literally anything else, honestly.
Yeah, you're probably fucking up on that one.
Yeah, anyway, today we're talking, I guess we're talking a little bit about podcasts. I think today might be the start, or maybe the teaser, the prologue, chapter 0, episode 1, I don't know, of our brand new hater arc. I want to talk about podcasts and media spheres and influencers. I'm feeling very, very anti-influencer pilled. And what better way to start this little adventure than talking about the biggest podcaster of them all, the ape with the most bananas, for better or worse, Joe Rogan. Does Joe Rogan even need an introduction? What should we say to get this ball rolling?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people have listened to Joe Rogan in the past. I mean, he kind of got a lot of people into podcasts in general. I mean, I will say that I used to listen to his podcast. And the main reason is because he used to have a lot of somewhat interesting people on there. And like in the earlier days of his podcast, he was a bit less, maybe a bit less opinionated, and he would kind of like just let people talk, and or just be kind of less dumb. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at this through rose-colored glasses, But
No, I've heard people say the same thing. I was never a Joe Rogan fan or listener at any point, but I've watched some different clips. I've heard people talk about him, and it definitely seems like he used to be like more of a listener. I feel like he had a bit more of a humility. Like, okay, he would bring on somebody who's like an expert about something, and he wouldn't like pretend he knew more about them than they did or whatever.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, and it was kind of more of a conversation. Whereas, now we know what's going on with old Joe. He's pivoted towards a certain kind of guest. He's let a lot more of his opinions fly. I guess that's kind of an inevitability when you get this kind of clout and this kind of platform. Is just like you have shower thoughts, as we all do. The difference is we don't all have a platform with tens of millions of people listening to this shit. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's very easy to like look at the media landscape or whatever and be like, oh, people are media illiterate nowadays. Everybody's like fucking dumb and brain rotted, and everybody's like a big stupid piece of shit or whatever. Not even just on the internet. Like, it's easy to look at like what's been broadcasting on TV over the course of our lives and noticing how like things that used to be very educational, like the Discovery Channel or like TLC or some shit or whatever, like, oh, they used to do shows about science and learning things, and now it's all just like reality show, like fucking like vapid whatever slop. And I don't know, it's easy to get very cynical and think like, oh, everybody's just like a big fucking dumbass or whatever, this is just what the masses want. But I do think, maybe to be a little more hopeful about it, I do think there's a thing that a lot of people want in media. I think a lot of people like to feel like they're learning something new, and they're having like I don't know about having their views challenged, but I like to think that people like to think that they're getting something out of media, that they're learning things, that they're seeing something new and novel. And I think for a lot of people, Joe Rogan was like a good intro to that, because like, okay, he's like a bit of a dumbass. He was just like he was like the host of Fear Factor or something. I think he was like an MMA guy or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know his entire career. And like, I think he did like comedy for a little while. I don't know if that's a more recent thing or whatever, but like, he's just like a very like Joe Schmo kind of like average like motherfucking like dude or whatever. But he would bring on these experts, and I think a lot of people tuned in because it's like, oh, he has interesting guests. These guests know a lot about different subjects. I'm like getting something out of it, right? So I think that for a lot of people that might have been like the initial appeal, even if that's very, I don't know, we can argue about whether or not that's still what some people see in the show.
Yeah, from what I remember about Joe Rogan's career, he started out doing a show called News Radio, some very forgettable sitcom in the 90s, and then he did Fear Factor, which is like, it's a shitty fucking slop reality network TV show. And then he somehow transitioned into announcing MMA fights, and I think that's when he got the recognition to do the podcast. And the podcast is really what he got his fame from. And I think like it probably the built-in viewer base was from the MMA announcing shit, the UFC stuff.
It's a very masculine kind of dude bro-y sort of subculture that started that whole thing.
Yeah, and the real appeal of his show is he just had access to a lot of really like diverse guests, and as I said before, he's just a dude. He's kind of an everyman. He's kind of a dopey fucking, like it's there's an appeal there. And I think maybe this is appeal for me, even though I really aged out of this demographic, is just kind of the like, because I used to be this guy, is just kind of like a sitting around smoking weed with your friends talking about fucking things that are like somewhat interesting that you're like not really informed about. Just like, hey, yo, what did you? I heard that like aliens like built the pyramids, man.
I mean, that's like the stereotype of podcasts, right? I think it was something like the plural for a group of straight guys is a podcast or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like that is the stereotype for podcasters too, is it's a bunch of dudes sitting around drinking beers and smoking weed and talking about who knows whatever the fuck. And it's like, it's probably interesting to you, it's probably somewhat funny to you, and then they're just like, yo, we should start a podcast, man. Like, imagine if we talked about this, but like in a microphone. And
I don't want to talk too much shit, but I think there was a couple of years ago where I was doing this thing that I hope a lot of other people do, so I feel less weird about it, where I was in my mid-20s a couple of years ago, and I was like, I wonder what a bunch of people who I used to go to high school with are up to nowadays. And I remember this one guy I went to high school with, and he was a very like kind of like class clown sort of dude or whatever. And I remember even back then, he said his plans for like after graduation was he wanted to get into stand-up comedy or something like that. And as far as I know, he did do that both in our hometown and out in Victoria, one of the biggest cities in my province out here. And I found out a few years ago, apparently he did start a podcast about like video games and like wrestling or something. And I never listened to it, but I'm like, man, it was like it had like 20 views or something. It was a fraction of even our size right now. So I was like, I'm not gonna listen to this, but man, that really validates some of my assumptions about different kinds of people.
I mean, that's surprising because being a dude who wants to talk about video games and wrestling, that's never been done before. That's a really interesting concept. It's like, here's a bunch of various unrelated media and things that I'm into. What if we made a podcast about this?
I mean, I've seen some video essays. I've been convinced that wrestling can be cool and interesting. I like video games, but also like I also feel like, okay, let's not kid ourselves. The average person doesn't have very novel or interesting opinions about any of these things, you know?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of the thing about like podcasts in general, is this kind of like, here's a bunch of like random unpointed shit that I just like, that I want to just like talk about at length, even though I don't really have any novel opinions on this. That would make a great podcast. It's like, man, I really want to listen to like a dude talk about like some movies that he watched, and then like some other stuff that's just like, you know, bouncing around in his head with no real narrative on top of it.
Well,
Hey,
awesome. Get this. I've got a great podcast idea. Hear me out. It's we're gonna sit around and talk about movies and kind of joke about them, but we're also like Marxists or something. That's really funny and original, right? That's a great idea for a show.
Yeah, a Marxist analysis of media consumption. Which is really
the secret leftism of Space Jam strikes again.
yeah. There are a lot of narratives that the scriptwriter definitely had in there. It's not just me having an episode. As usual, it's something that we need to unpack.
Yeah, but I think we're starting to drift and talk about a very different type of people that get into podcasting than maybe the Joe Rogan audience.
Right, yeah. The Joe Rogan audience, though. I like, as I said, I was one of them, and I think I just thought like the topics were somewhat interesting. Joe was kind of in the background, and I think that's what separates old JRE. And that's the Joe Rogan Experience. That's what the podcast is actually called, I'm pretty sure, unless they changed the name. In the new one, where the new version is Joe he talks more than he listens, and when he's listening, well, the guests he's had on of late have been of a certain demographic.
Yeah, they've definitely been of a certain kind of political persuasion, we could say. Before we get there, I just want to interrupt and say, man, every time I hear the show abbreviated as JRE, for some reason my mind jumps to jerk off instructions, which is a different acronym. That's not what those letters stand for. But like, I guess it is kind of like a masturbatory sort of media anyway, so I guess it's not really that far off.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's very masturbatory.
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of people talk about the history of Joe Rogan, right, and kind of like the shift in the kind of guests he's had on before, and I've heard some people say even very recently, there was a video I was watching, I don't remember from who, it was some channel that I'm never gonna watch again or whatever, not for any like serious reasons, it was part of the research for the show, and somebody was like, well, Joe Rogan seemed like he was kind of a left leaning guy or whatever, and I still think he's kind of left leaning today. He still supports Bernie Sanders and other left-leaning politicians like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. And I'm like, oh man, you don't know what you're talking about.
yeah. And that's the thing about Joe, is he preys on people's ignorance, and that's why he's so dangerous, because he is an ignoramus himself. And there's been a lot of speculation on, like, is Joe now kind of a... Does he have an agenda, or is he being manipulated by people with an agenda, or is he just like a dumbass who just kind of goes along with whatever? But
I've heard some people say, I've seen people put this out there that, okay, when Joe Rogan signed on to the Spotify deal or whatever, Spotify is like largely owned by this like Chinese billionaire or something. So they're like, oh, ever since he moved to Spotify, now he's there to like destabilize the West by having these like divisive like far right political figures or whatever. I don't believe that. Some people have said that. No. I think it's kind of bullshit. I think that's a little too conspiratorial. I think he's just kind of a dumbass, and he's a useful idiot for whoever he's talking to.
That's
honestly.
Exactly it. That's exactly it. He didn't go on Spotify with the stipulation that he has to like start being a right-wing crank. He was already on that tip, and they were like, all right, now it's time to get him. And then, and like, have they whispered into his ear, and have they said, hey, we can get you Donald Trump. We can get you this fucking tech billionaire robber baron crank on your show. Like, what do you think about this? And I'm sure he's just like, yeah, cool, bro. Yeah, that's awesome.
I mean,
awesome.
That's certainly possible, but even that I think might be a little bit conspiratorial, because like, even before his kind of like rightward shift, right, like he had no trouble getting whatever guests he wanted. He was already like the #1 podcast for so many years. I honestly think it's as simple as like Spotify wants to be like the conglomerate that owns all of podcasting, so of course they're going to make a deal to get the biggest podcast. It's as simple as that.
Of course. And as we were talking about before we went live, like, as much as the podcasting scene sucks now, the actual medium of podcasting is cool, because it's one of the few like still decentralized platforms that exist on the current 2025 World Wide Web, the internet, as we still call it. And Spotify, their deal with Joe Rogan is their really, really strong attempt to do away with that. They want to be the platform that you listen to podcasts on. They want to be the exclusive platform that you listen to podcasts on. So,
They essentially want to be the YouTube of podcasts.
Yes, exactly. Because podcasts still are, they're kind of hosted, in the ether, and it's really just an RSS feed that tells you when a new episode drops. And there are hosting services. We use one, but it's not this like. It's not the centralized
There's a million
platform.
fucking podcasting apps, and you can listen to us on any of them. We just press a button, and the show is on all of them. It's cool. I think that should remain existing.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you can host your podcast anywhere. You could host it on your home computer. I mean, that would use more bandwidth than you want to, but like, it's still possible. But you can't host a YouTube video or a Spotify album on your computer, or anybody else is hosting. So, and that's what they want. They want to control the entire ecosystem. If you listen to our podcast on Spotify, it is on there. Just like it's on, every kind of podcast aggregating app that there is. I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but there are alternatives. I'm just going to put that out there.
I'm
Maybe
also not
anyway.
going to tell you not to do it, but whenever I say something about how like I love everyone in our audience, I just want you to know if you listen on Spotify, you're excluded from that. I hate you.
Yeah. I guess that's what I was trying to say. So, feel bad about yourself, but don't stop listening.
Exactly. Redeem yourself through Patreon dollars.
Yes, exactly. And you can listen to our bonus episodes on the shitty Patreon app. Although,
yeah, right. Okay, let's not get flagged in the fucking ad skip extension for Chrome or whatever. I got that recently. And it's great, by the way. For
yes, I actually
ad reads.
I actually got that recently as well. But even though we host the bonus episodes on Patreon, they still come up in other podcast aggregating apps, so you don't have to listen on the Patreon app. Just saying.
Yeah, look, I love our Patreon supporters, but I'm with you. I agree that the fucking Patreon website app, whatever, it all sucks. It's a shitty player, and I don't like it.
Yep.
Anyway, I think we've kind of laid a good groundwork for the ways that, okay, Joe Rogan's like a big podcast. We can kind of see how he got big. There was a little bit I wanted to talk about today with kind of like the nature of comedy more broadly, because I don't want to just focus on podcasts, but also Joe Rogan kind of fancies himself as like a bit of a comedian, both in the stand-up variety and also as like a kind of like fucking ubermensch, like, oh, I make jokes and I am funny, therefore I'm like a better sort of human being. I think comedy means a lot of things to different people, and I think it's kind of taken on a different meaning as I get older and go through life. I don't think it quite means the thing that I thought it did many years ago. Do you have any thoughts about that?
So Joe Rogan is a perfect exemplar of a type of, I mean, I'm using the term very loosely here, comedian, that we're seeing tied into this ethos of the like anti-woke, complaining about cancel culture type of comedian that we see now, and there's a couple unifying aspects of these guys. The number one thing that I would say above all else is they're people who were relevant in the 90s and then quickly lost relevance because it's not the fucking 90s anymore. And
Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld is the second person after Joe Rogan that comes to mind for that. So, in this topic, this has been talked about at length in previous episodes and by other people before as well. But so now, since they've lost relevance, and I guess a third thing is that they were never really that funny to begin with, or never really, well, I'm not going to say that never that relevant, because in terms of like Jerry Seinfeld, like Seinfeld was a massive cultural phenomenon. I'm not going to
I would owe that more to, what's the other guy, Larry David, than
oh
Seinfeld
yeah,
himself,
absolutely,
but,
absolutely.
That's for another day.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's because of Jerry, but like Jerry like the fucking show was named Seinfeld. Let's not kid ourselves that he
was the title guy. So.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But Jerry Seinfeld was never funny. I don't even think in like terms of like 90s standards humor he was ever funny.
You can watch episodes of The Simpsons fucking 20-30 years ago making fun of him being the fucking what's the deal with airplane food fucking guy. Like, yeah. Okay, that bit was never funny.
Yeah. And he always sucks. And then so now it's like it's this cope of like, well, okay, I make these jokes and I do joke, and nobody wants to hear that anymore. So what's the reason? It's not because I've lost relevance. It's not because I was never that funny. It's not because of any. It's because of woke. It's because of cancel culture. It's because of all this shit. And it's like, Yeah, man, that's why. That's why nobody wants to watch your fucking Netflix stand-up special. That they'll greenlight anybody with like household name recognition to do a stand-up special because like Netflix will greenlight literally anything, and if it's a show that's good, they'll cancel it after the first season because fuck anything good. But let's have the Kevin Hart fucking stand-up comedy special where he just screams and like yeah, but like anyways, like this is what comedy is to these guys. It's very like untalented, unclever people doing stand-up because basically because they want to, because they like stand-up. And
well, not just that, but also because one, there's kind of like a prestige to it. Like a lot of these guys, they used to be a lot more famous in the 90s because I think people just liked stand-up comedy a lot more in the 90s. Back when TV was more of a mainstream, back when we had more of a unified media monoculture or whatever. Like, okay, if there was a big stand-up act on TV or something, okay, a lot more people would be tuning in, whereas now with the internet, everything's a lot more fragmented or whatever. So I feel like, okay, back then these people had all this prestige from doing it, and now they don't have that as much. So like they can't really reflect on themselves and be like, oh, is my material not funny anymore? Have I just like been sitting on my laurels or whatever and not like innovating my act or like trying to do new things? No, it has to be the audience that's wrong.
Exactly.
I was thinking on good analogies while we were preparing for the show today. Do you know this might seem a bit out there at first, but do you know anything about fucking Call of Duty YouTubers?
Go on.
So one of the big things, and I never watched this because I'm not into Call of Duty, but I know this from just like watching other people who like talk about video games for a living or whatever. One of the big things that was really popular back in the day, like mid late 2000s, 2010 something on YouTube, was Call of Duty YouTubers who would make a thing out of getting like clips of them playing multiplayer really well. And it's not just them like doing like okay and doing multiplayer matches. They would want to go for like a stomp or whatever, or like, oh, I just got like 20-30 fucking kills and oh, that's so cool. And the way that they do that is that they would hop onto a brand new account in spite of like playing the game for many years, so the account wouldn't be like, oh, you're really good at this game, so you have a high matchmaking or whatever. Yeah. Basically, they were playing against people who were brand new to the game and like owning them to get good clips or whatever. And this occurred to me like, oh, it kind of seems like this is what a lot of comedians kind of want, right? It's not enough that they're still like, okay, like even in the present, right? Jerry Seinfeld makes a lot of fucking money, even though he's not funny and not really that relevant anymore. But the thing is, they don't just want some of the prestige or recognition. It's not enough to be like a big Netflix like headliner act anymore. They want the fucking fame and the fortune, and they want to be regarded as like the funniest fucking like philosopher kings on earth that ever lived. They want to be known for how like gut-bustingly hilarious they are, and they're just not going to get those laughs anymore. And I think that's where a lot of their like resentment comes from.
Yeah, they're fucking lazy. They're fucking lazy, and that's the thing. That's why it's such an easy narrative to say like, oh no, it's not. Yeah, maybe I need to like do something new and innovative or whatever. It's like no, like they got some sort of fame at like from a time where you had to like, you know, be in the right place in the right time and get lucky. And I'm not going to say like none of these dudes like worked hard to get that, you know, that audition or, you know, to ingratiate themselves into LA culture as much as that fucking sucks. Like I'm sure they did a thing, but it's just kind of like they enjoyed some sort of success that comes from a mixture of some hard work and a lot of luck. And then they're just like, well, okay, I got that, but now like, why did it stop? Like, give me more. I'm here. I did this. So like, give me more. I lost relevance. Well, It's not me. It's the children who must be wrong.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I see myself as a funny person. That is a fundamental, like, immutable trait that I have, so I can't lose that over time. That's something that was true in the 90s, so it still has to be true today. Which, like, no, not necessarily. A lot of the reason we find certain things funny and other things not funny, it's for broader societal, cultural reasons or whatever. Like, things that we laugh at change over time, and that's neither, like, a good or a bad thing. It's just how it is.
Yeah, and I think, like, with somebody like Joe Rogan, he was never funny. But
True.
But I think, like, he decided at one point that he wanted to be a stand-up comedian. He wanted to be funny because he respected the art, which, like, cool, I get that. But then it kind of, like, he you know, you watch these people like, you know, Richard Pryor and, you know, like all of these greats,
I would say maybe Dave Chappelle, although he fell off quite hard in the last couple years.
Dave Chappelle is a great example of this, where it's just like he was, you know, like, I mean, that guy was fucking
I think he was
unstoppable.
legitimately he was really fucking funny in the past.
Hilarious, amazing, and he was doing something that nobody ever did before. And this is why, like, and I know Chappelle's show, like, I can understand why he distanced himself from Chappelle's show, because Chappelle's show was hilarious, but, like, I was in, like, I don't know, I was in, like early college when Chappelle's show took off, and it's, like, the amount of, like, corny white kids just, like, being like, fuck your couch, insert racial slur here, and, like,
yeah,
and all that shit.
Yeah.
It's just, like, yeah, dude, like, I get that must have just been, like, really fucking tiring for you, man. Like, I get it. But then it's like, so Dave Chappelle drops off the map for a while, and then he comes back, and it's just like, and he's just doing this just like lame, boring shit, and then he just kind of has this I don't know. I don't even know if I, like, watched the whole thing that he supposedly got quote unquote canceled for about, like, trans people. I think I watched, like, the bit, and it was just like it was like, okay, like, the narrative was like, oh, your people are woke now, so you can't make these jokes, and it's just like, well, it just wasn't funny. Like, it's not.
I'm sure I would have had more to say about it if you asked me, like, 2 years ago. But I barely, like, it's forgettable. I have nothing to say because it's not worth thinking about.
So something that I was gonna say before is, like, when you look at these guys who kind of have this, you know, like the Jerry Seinfelds and the Joe Rogans and shit, where they're talking about these people who were relevant in the 90s, and then they try to, like, come back and do comedy, and nobody likes it because it sucks. There was this kind of culture in the 90s and the early 2000s and shit, where it's like, when everything was still kind of controlled by, like, network TV stations, and all of the real gritty stuff was on, like, HBO. It was like an HBO or pay-per-view comedy special or something like that, because it's got to be on HBO or pay-per-view or one of these, like, premium cable channels.
Because you can't say that on television.
You can't say that on television. So it was always like, this comedian, raw and uncut and uncensored, you've never seen him before. And then it's like a clip, and it's just like, I think that you beep 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 beep, and it pans to the audience, and they're shitting and pissing themselves because he said, like, a racial slur and, like, the F word or something, and, like, that's in like, edgy kind of, like swear word culture was still kind of new back then, because the internet didn't take off
even
yet.
then,
yeah,
even then it would not be as, like, edgy as even something that seems very anodyne now, like the fucking, like, angry video game nerd, like,
exactly,
pouring shit all over a fat girl's titties or whatever, you know. It's like, it's that level we're operating on.
Hey guys, it's Moist Critical. I haven't been here in a while. I haven't been on the Super Despair World podcast in a while, but this Joe Rogan comedy special is like a poop with a shit on it and a baby's fart poured on top of it and a woman's bra with shit all over it.
These stand-up comedians, these young sweet boys, they just want to make want to make jokes about fat girls' titties, and the woke mob, they won't let them be.
Oh man, we got a lot of cameos.
We're bringing out some old ones. That's the thing about comedy. It always repeats, first as farce and then as tragedy, as Dave Chappelle demonstrated.
They're all coming back, but it's just like it's kind of like it reminds me of like Eminem, who like made huge waves with his like first album because he said a lot of real edgy shit, and it's like
the
this was
FCC
edgy.
wouldn't let him be.
Exactly. Like this was edgy in fucking 1998, but it's like then he's coming back and just like, oh, I fucked a bitch and put it in shit, and I'm gonna kill her and put her body in it, and it's just like, yeah, dude, we've had the internet for 20 years now. This is not like you need to be a little bit more clever than like saying.
I feel
saying
like anything short of saying you're going to like kill a senator is like pretty milk toast nowadays. Like not to, I'm gonna sound very old doing like kids these days, but like you look at children's media these days and it's like Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever. It's like, oh, this is about like a serial killer that like murdered children and stuffed them into a building or some shit.
Yeah, exactly. It
like that's what kids like. This is considered kids media, which like it's fine. I do think it's pretty juvenile or whatever, but like, okay, there's a different standard for what's edgy nowadays, and it's much higher.
No, for sure, and that's like the evolution of media, for better or worse. I mean, I remember when I used to teach like elementary school kids, and I was like, hey, all right, it's movie day because I'm hungover and I don't want to. Just kidding. Unless, and I would be like, all right, we can watch a movie today. What do you guys want to watch? And they're just like, watch like Annabelle and shit. And I was just like, no, like I can't show you guys like a fucking slasher horror film. Like, yeah, we want to watch Saw 2. I like the scene.
I forget if I bring this up, but I was in high school. I might have mentioned this in a bonus episode or something, but I was in high school in 10th grade French class because I'm Canadian and they made me take it. I had to take a year of French in 10th grade. And we were doing this like learning exercise or whatever where we had to read some sentences in French, and it was like talking about different movies or something. And one of the examples on the fucking like random worksheet that the teacher gave us was it referenced the movie Martyrs, which is like an art house like torture porn movie where like a girl is like kept in a basement by a family for many years and like tortured, and she breaks out and like murders the shit out of them and gets like skinned alive or something. And I'm like, why is this on our fucking worksheet homework in
because it's French, so it's art. I mean,
I guess so, but like the other, I don't even remember what the other movie's on there, but it was like pretty fucking like anodyne. Like it may as well have been like the SpongeBob movie for one of the other like sentences we had to read or something like that.
No, it's a meme of like disgusting horror movie America. It's like disgusting horror movie France. Oh, high art. Wow. Oh, there must be a great narrative here that we should analyze.
I did watch that movie at some point. Not really for me. I'm not really a torture porn kind of person.
No, that shit is fucking weird. Sorry. Like, if you're into that, that's cool. I mean, you do you. I mean,
I guess the effects were well done. It was pretty convincing, I would say, but I don't know. Anyway.
Right. I guess it depends on what like perspective you're coming. If you're into like what do they call it? Like not CGI, but like the effects that are made with real things, practical effects.
Practical
effects, and like visual horror. That's cool. For me,
it was not
like,
a CGI kind of thing.
It's just like I don't really want to see like depictions of people getting sawed in half. It doesn't really do anything for me. But if you like it, fucking rock on. It doesn't bother me.
It's not even about, it's like, this isn't scary. This is just like repulsive. It's just, I don't want to see it.
Right.
But, yeah. Speaking of other things I don't want to see, Joe Rogan.
Oh yeah, Joe Rogan. What about him?
There was a thought I wrote down, and maybe this is something we could explore. it's been said before on the show. I heard this somewhere, that there's this idea, right, that masculinity, right, is something that's not like inherent to just like being born with a dick. It's not just assumed that you're masculine if you're a man in society, right? It's kind of like masculinity is this thing that kind of has to be earned. And I feel like I didn't come to terms with the whole trans thing until I was in my like early 20s or whatever. So like being young, being like a little boy or whatever, even back then I had this perception that, okay, I'm not very like funny or charming or athletic or whatever, but one of the ways that I can be popular and make friends is to be considered funny. I think, for a lot of guys, being the funny guy in the group, it's a way to like have other people validate you and value your existence or whatever. So I think for a lot of guys, I don't think it's a surprise that like the comedy scene, whether it's like stand-up comedy or like the podcast circuit nowadays, it's a very masculine kind of sphere, right? It's kind of dominated by a lot of these like dude bros, kind of like Joe Rogan or whatever.
Yes. And there's a quote from a hip hop song, and if you know this reference, without looking it up, put it in the comments. I will immensely respect you forever.
And before you type a comment, Dave is allowed to say it, okay?
Yeah, so beep, 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 beep. No, it's everybody's got a way to try to be the man. Some write rhymes, others move kilograms, and you can go on from there. But
true
and
though.
it's kind of that, and this goes along with my continued narrative about everybody's got to have this identity, and it's like, well, am I the jock? Am I the funny guy? Am I this guy? Am I the fucking whatever? And it's like, well, if I can't be the jock, well, then I got to be the funny guy. It's all this like kind of calculated thing, and I really think that a lot of this comes back to like. And surely media historically has been like a reflection of societies, but I think it's like really a self-affirming thing where it's kind of like a lot of us grew up with these like, like teen sitcom drama shows and movies and shit where it's just like everybody's typecast into the same. There's the nerd, there's the jock, there's the everyman, there's the girl next door, there's the cheerleader, there's the funny comedian guy, and they all go on and do all of their typecast things, and then there's a musician, and then there's a like fuck up fucking druggie with a heart of gold.
This is as old as time. It's the fucking the Archie comics or whatever.
Yeah,
basically.
It's the Archie comics. It's like, I mean, there's like fucking archetypes of characters that go back to like fucking Greek plays and shit in the times of antiquity. Like this has always been something that's been pushed on us, but
this is just how humans think about the world and tell stories about our experiences.
We have to compartmentalize and categorize everything.
It's like the Jungian archetype of the Greek hero who kills the Muppet inside of him.
Some of us jerk off, and some of us watch other people jerk off, and it's a natural thing.
And there's nothing wrong with sometimes you're the person in the chair jerking off, watching other people do something despicable
to your wife, and then you kind of like it, and then you go on an all beef diet with your daughter.
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that home.
But. Yeah,
that's real comedy, folks.
So it's like, I mean, if you look at a guy like Rogan, it's pretty clear that he's. I mean, like I can only imagine what it's like to be like to just have that taste. When you're in your fucking 20s or something, you get that taste. You get that taste of LA lifestyle. You're on some fucking bullshit show. You get a little taste. The show gets canceled. I don't know what happened in news radio. That show fucking sucked. So I'd be surprised if
I've never even heard about it before today.
It's
if
ass.
I'm honest.
It's ass. It's such like a typical like 90s fucking. It's the 90s like network primetime equivalent of like. what we would call like second screen Netflix shit now. It's probably stuff that like somebody would put on while they're like, you know, making dinner or like folding laundry or something. Like nobody's like, oh shit, news radio's on.
I think second screen media is like kind of the new term for it, but I definitely think this kind of stuff has always existed.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's what like daytime soap opera shit was. It was definitely like stuff that was just
fucking the Oprah show.
The Oprah
like,
show, all that.
Whatever.
Yeah, like fucking daytime talk talk radio. I mean, I know my dad listened to fucking Rush Limbaugh. Like it was just on.
Rest in piss, by the way.
It was just on at his shop when he was like, you know, working on cars and shit, and it's just fucking garbage that just infiltrates your fucking your eardrums at all times of the day. And yeah, absolutely fucking rest in piss, you piece of shit. I hope it was painful, you motherfucker. But
I have to say, you know, I lost my own dad to cancer, and I hope Rush Limbaugh's cancer hurt every fucking minute.
Oh man,
so.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But like, yeah, back to Rogan. It's like, I mean, he got a taste of that, and it's just like, yeah, like you gotta try to figure it out. And the thing that bothers me is like you got this. Like you got this with the podcast. You had a good thing going. Shit, man. I was listening to it and you were like inoffensive to me, but like it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to be the Joe Rogan
good thing going, and you had to fuck it up because of your pride and your ego.
No, absolutely. And then like he had to become the guy, and I mean, we see this. It's the same. It's the same shit that happened with like Elon. It's just like, man, you had a thing going. People thought you were a genius, and just like people thought Joe Rogan was like just the cool fucking. This is a whole other topic, but the anti-establishment kind of just like new media guy. And then it just wasn't enough. Like they had to keep going with it, and they had to. It wasn't enough to just be the guy here, you know, the maestro. It wasn't enough to be the maestro. They had to be the lead violin and the maestro at the same time. They had to be the rock star. They had to be the front man. They couldn't be the guitarist with mystique. They had to be the front man. Like.
This is actually a perfect segue into one of the thoughts I had written down here. You know, we talk a lot about like economics and like capitalism on this show, but I think a term that a lot of people kind of understand, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about, is this idea of social capital, right? Do you kind of know what I mean by social capital?
Yeah, for sure.
It's this idea. It's like clout. It's like popularity. It's like influence. It's like how seriously you're taken, how many people listen to you, how many people think like your opinion is worth hearing and knowing about at all, right? And I think it's very easy for us to talk about like regular capitalism, right? Okay, when you're like, okay, it's not enough to just make a lot of money. You want to make all of the money on earth. You want to completely have as much money as possible, and then like, oh, you've hit the maximum amount of people who are actually willing to pay for this. Well, no, now you need to find a way to squeeze even more dollars out of it. And when you describe this like compulsion that these people have, where like, oh, they get a taste of fame, a taste of popularity, there's something like very validating about being a stand-up comedian. You're one person on a stage staring at like a crowd of potentially like several thousand people who all have like their attention 100% focused on you. I can imagine that can be like a high, right? That can be something that feels good.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So, you know, when you describe, oh, how it's never enough for these people, you know, I think that's social capital at play. It's not enough that these guys are well liked or famous, or that they have a career like doing stand-up comedy or like podcasts at all. No, they have to have all of the clout. They have to be thought of as like these great fucking philosopher kings, these like superior human human beings who have this like essence of humor and funny in them that regular people don't. And I think, we talk a lot about like people like Elon Musk or whatever about how, oh, this is like some supervillain shit. This person thinks he's like better than other human beings. He has all these like weird fucking like little eugenics projects going on, and like these weird beliefs about extending human life and going to space or what, and like a lot of dumb sci-fi like narcissistic bullshit like that. And I think, you see a lot of the same attitude with like all these fucking stand-up comedians who like, okay, everything on this earth has an expiry date, and theirs is coming, or maybe it's already past them, and they can't deal with that. They need more, and they just can't accept that they have to let go at some point and just be like, okay, you're just a regular fucking person again like everybody else.
Yeah, and it's funny because like this ties into just like the regular capitalism concept as well, in the sense that like, okay, these people have like, if you look at like Elon, like he has more money than anyone could like fucking dream, like an absurd amount of money, an absurd amount of wealth.
You could buy whatever you want every day for the rest of your life and still not spend that entire
you
fucking
couldn't
fortune.
Spend that amount of money if you wanted to, but like it's not because like at that point the money is meaningless. So it's like, well, what else? Like, what else do I do? Because like obviously to get that amount of wealth, you have to be like I'm not saying like Elon Musk got his amount of wealth due to like virtue or hard work or something like that. I mean, he was certainly an ambitious guy. You can't, like, he didn't do it by like laying down in his bed, pissing himself. He definitely had a lot of legs up, and I'm certainly not subscribing to the genius narrative, because really he just bought a bunch of businesses. But like obviously there's a lot of motivation to get to that amount of wealth is what I'm saying. But like, so you get that, and you got all the wealth, and it's just like, well, what else? Like, what do I do now? It's like, well, I beat the money video game. Now I got to do now. What are the like bonus achievements? Okay, well, now I have to like be liked and have people like me. And in the getting money thing, apparently he was good at. The being liked thing is fucking up real hard on that one.
Well, I would say he's fucking it up now, but you go back like 10 years or whatever, and a lot of people thought much more positively of him back then. That was back in the days when the average like Redditor or whatever was just this like kind of nerdy guy who's like, oh, he likes science and science fiction and like posting about things on the internet, maybe owning the fundies on r/atheism or something like that. A kind of guy that doesn't really exist anymore, because they've all kind of become like fascists or like finance bros or whatever now. But he was very popular with that kind of like nerdy whatever guy back then, which I talked earlier about how humor and comedy and being seen as the funny guy is a way for a lot of dudes to claim their masculinity or whatever. But also like there's a kind of masculinity in a certain like intellectual kind of lifestyle as
for
well.
Sure.
Like, oh, if you're seen as the smart guy, the successful business person, the
Tony
code
Stark
monkey, code monkey who works himself up to CEO or whatever. That's another kind of like aspirational masculinity that's been around my whole life at least. And I think even back then he embodied that for a lot of people.
Yeah, and the thing, this ties back to Rogan. When you do that kind of like Redditor, liberal, left-leaning type of thing, there's
kind of libertarian, maybe.
Sure. There's like a lot of there's a bit of responsibility that comes along with that, where like you say a lot of shit and people are on board, but you might say something that's a little bit it's not that great, or you might say something that's like pretty like that's wrong, dude, like you don't really know what you're talking about. And when you're a dude like Joe Rogan, or a dude who's so like insulated like Elon Musk, and then you get this platform where you can kind of just say whatever, and then they start to say whatever, and then people are like, fact check, like, you don't know what you're talking about, dude, like, then it's like, all right, then you got to start like backpedaling. You got to issue apologies. Say like that's a lot of shit. But here's an easier route that you can go when you're just like a dude with a platform. Like if you just want to say whatever, just become a fucking right winger. Just become a far right. Because you can say whatever. You can just say whatever. And if you have money and influence, they'll just be like, yeah, based. Like, like that's awesome.
Yeah, you don't need to surround yourself with people who are going to like hold you to a standard. You can just surround yourself with people who will agree with you because it makes them fucking money.
It's way easier, and it goes back to what we were saying before. Is just like with the whole cancel culture thing. It's just like, what's like? I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Like, you're gonna like innovate and like make something new and like do all this. That's like man, I already
thinking
have
of jokes is hard. Okay, like like new jokes that are funny to an audience. It's not easy.
Instead, I'll just say lame shit, and if people don't like it, just be like, oh, you can't say that anymore. You don't. Yeah, we don't need to evolve past 1994.
It's like no. I'm not a lesser man for not being funny. You're a lesser man for not thinking I'm funny because you're weak.
It's the children who are wrong. Always. And it's just such a convenient way of thinking about everything and interacting with the world. So yeah, you just hop on that right wing shit and that's easy. And like I was thinking about before, because I shared with you. We were talking about shout outs to Elephant Graveyard, by the way, who made a bunch of really great videos. If you haven't watched any of this dude's shit on YouTube before, where he talks about Joe Rogan in his very hilarious comedy mothership sphere of really hilarious comedians. I'm
gonna fully own up to this. His recent video about Joe Rogan is a big reason we're doing this episode.
Oh,
right
absolutely,
now, so.
Absolutely, a great influence and a great inspiration for this episode. So big shout outs. So I was watching. Wait, what was it? The one about
Elephant Graveyard about.
I think it was a Joe Rogan. The Joe Rogan stand-up special, the one that he did before. Whatever it was called, Sink the Boats or whatever the fuck
Sink the Boat or something like that.
Yeah, it's real funny, but shit.
The video, not Sink the Boat. You
don't.
was awful.
No, you don't want to watch that. But
there's a point to be raised here about all this claim about like cancel culture, right? How a lot of it seems to come out of these like people who, like I brought up with the comedian class in the 90s who used to have a lot more prestige or whatever. A lot of the people who are always going on nowadays about like, oh, cancel culture this, you can't say this anymore. Oh, they'll go after you if you say that. Nobody likes me because I joked about this thing or whatever. I think a lot of it comes down to people who are like used to having a certain amount of like privilege and status in society, and they're just really not used to being told, oh, you're not actually that funny or whatever, or oh, you're not actually that clever, or like, oh, this joke people don't actually like it when you joke about certain thing. You're kind of out of touch with the mainstream or whatever. And you could make arguments endlessly about like, oh, people are offended these days. Oh, are people too sensitive? Do people go too far with like seeking like accountability or like retribution on the internet for like social slights or whatever? We can have those conversations endlessly, but when it comes to like the big mainstream like comedy circuit or whatever, all these people who like I do think you can't really separate them from this idea of like the masculine, like, okay, I'm a funny guy. Being funny is like innately part of me being a man, and like I need to like uphold that or whatever. Because when you say, well, no, you're not actually funny or whatever, like it then becomes very easy for them to take it personally as like as an attack on their character, when if comedy is like an art form like people say, then no, that shouldn't be an attack on your character. That could just be like, okay, you're doing this craft and you did it poorly this time and you can improve with some criticism or whatever, but like it's never taken taken that way.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's really the problem is, you know, you'd think if somebody really respects this craft as much as these guys posture, and like on the Joe Rogan podcast when he has these comedians on, they're always posturing. Well, he's always posturing about like, oh, the craft of comedy, you know, I respect it so much, I respect all these. And it's like, man, these people who do this as a living, and these people who came before you that you fucking dick ride so hard, like they fucking devoted their lives to this. And you really expect to just kind of like go up there because Netflix gave you a special because you have a successful podcast and they know they're going to get numbers. Like, and you just go up there with this bullshit and it sucks and it's not great. And it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have been up there in the first place. And also, like, okay, you went up there and it wasn't great. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe like take a little fucking criticism and then like, you know, go back there and maybe try to do it again, or maybe not, or maybe, you know, keep doing something else. But it's like, no, they can't do it. They can't. Their fucking ego can't handle a little bit of truth. And like, yeah, but
some of the most insane, like, narcissistic, like, egotistical bullshit that I've ever heard in my life was from listening to Joe Rogan talk in a few hours before we recorded this show. I was doing some research, and in one of these videos, there's a clip of him talking about how, like, there are only like 500, maybe 250 to 500 stand-up comedians left on the entire planet Earth or something like that.
Oh, man.
And like, I don't know where the fuck that number comes from. That sounds like bullshit to me. But like, just the utter fucking like hubris of that. Like, does he really believe that he's part of this remarkable, like, 0.00001% of the human population, probably less, that's probably not enough zeros? Does he think like he and his like podcast buddies are like so exceptional, and that like the lessening, like the stand-up comedy not being as popular anymore, that's like this great like loss for the human species? Like, oh, like it's like an animal going extinct or something like that? Like,
yes.
Get the fuck over yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you know, by and large, I don't really like stand-up comedy. I don't really like stand-up comedians. Sometimes I'll get like YouTube shorts or like TikTok clips or something of like a person I've never heard of doing this stand-up act, and you know, sometimes it's kind of funny. But I really think there's like a big disconnect with like the big successful people in a certain space and like the people trying to break into it, right? Because one of the things that I do actually respect a lot about like the craft of stand-up comedy is that like when you're a new person and you're starting out, you're gonna bomb at some point. You're gonna go up on stage and you're gonna do your material. You're gonna tell a joke and nobody's gonna fucking laugh. And worse, they might make fun of you while you're on the stage. And like, it's a humiliating experience, but also it's kind of a humbling one. I feel like you know, you kind of go through this, like if you've ever taken like a theater or like acting class. I got this myself when I was in like a drama class in high school or whatever. A great experience, by the way. I was like a very nerdy, not social kid, and that really brought me out of it. But you have to go through this like humbling experience of realizing, okay, I did my best and it wasn't good enough, but I can try again. It's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
If I just like if I'm not funny for a few minutes. But you have these guys like fucking Joe Rogan, like fucking Jerry Seinfeld, and now sadly these days like Dave Chappelle or whatever, and they're not funny anymore. And like they haven't tasted that humbling, that the humility that comes from bombing, because they don't allow themselves to be in a position where they can bomb. They surround themselves with like yes people who will just laugh at whatever they do. Joe Rogan opened the fucking comedy club where they confiscate your phone when you go in there because oh, people are gonna upload clips and will get canceled by the woke mob. No, you're taking people's phones away because you guys aren't fucking funny and you don't want to get dunked on it on the internet. That's what it is at the end end of the day. And like that's just the thing. There's a big disconnect between people who are already successful doing something because they can like insulate themselves and just continue to believe whatever delusions they need to, whatever delusions they have about their own success and their value and their skills or whatever, because they don't have to taste that humbling stick or whatever from an audience.
Yeah, and like when I think about like Joe Rogan's comedy and what it all really boils down to is this clip will like live rent free in my head forever, and it's the one that talks about like stool humping and the art of comedy when it comes to stool humping. And it's like if you've ever watched like a Joe Rogan comedy special or clips of that, he's a deeply unfunny guy. So he resorts to it all comes back to the idea of like so getting back to the idea of like you have some sort of like archetype that you fit yourself into to try to be a guy in the world, and some people are like, well, I'm the funny guy. And some people are like organically funny, they're clever. They come up with real zingers, or they're just they just have like a really
they're good at reading people. They're not out of touch. They know what people laugh at.
Yeah, they know what people laugh at, and also like they have like interesting, kind of like sardonic, just takes on like
they have novel observations. About normal things.
Stuff like it requires a certain amount of intelligence that some people don't really have, but
it's a people skill.
Yes, it's a people skill, and it's also like an intelligence skill. And some people don't have that, but they want to be a funny guy. So what does and this is something that I've observed from like working with kids. It's a lot of them have like attention seeking issues, and they need to get attention, whether positive or negative. And it's like, okay, you want to be a funny guy, but you're not really like that funny. Well, what do? You jump up on the table and you fucking rub your belly and you go, oh, I'm so sexy. Ooh, and you might get like a couple like uncomfortable chuckles. You might get yelled at and just like, I'm a funny guy. And that's Joe Rogan. He does a stool humping thing. He cribs like also a dude who I think is like tragically unfunny, like Sam Kinison, whose entire shtick is to yell into a microphone. Blah, 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 blah. Here's a joke, but I'm yelling it, so it's so
the
intense.
Loud equals funny kind of thing.
Yes,
I don't know
exactly.
Do you remember in the early days of YouTube the fucking Fred channel? Hi, it's Fred.
Yeah.
Like,
just
do you know
yelling.
that person?
Yeah, it's loud equals funny. It's so zany because he's like,
it's
loud.
so insane to me that Fred got a fucking like Disney Plus show or whatever. Not Disney Plus, the Disney Channel on TV.
I mean, but some children think yelling is funny. The issue is Joe Rogan's like 50 something years old, and that's still yelling, still doing stool humping, and that's
some people would say that stool work is only part of Joe Rogan's act, but I think his entire show is stool work, if you know what I mean. Ew,
because it's shit. Oh. Yeah, but like
Netflix, call me.
Yeah, unironically better than any joke that Joe Rogan has come up with in his life, and
thank you. I've been sitting on that for 2 hours.
And the sad part is like this dude has so much like clout now that he kind of commands like an ecosystem of shit where and you see that now, which is why there's like such an orbit of like Joe Rogan dick rider podcast bro, quote unquote comedian types that exist now, is because like they're just trying to get a 35-minute slot at the comedy mothership or whatever. so that they can, I don't know, like, what's the dream there? You open up for Brendan Schaub doing like a racist fucking Chinese guy voice. Like, is that it, guys? Is that what you want? Is that
racist Jerry Seinfeld be like, they can say it, why can't I say it?
What's the deal with not being able to say the N-word?
What's the deal with Asians? I'm sorry. but that is unironically what I imagine the average show at the mothership is probably like.
Yeah. And I watched that Back to the Elephant Graveyard. Big shout outs. I watched that one about David Lucas, and it was really like that was the whole set, and I think that's what I was thinking about earlier. Is it wasn't jokes. It was like his whole thing was like awkwardly standing on stage and like ripping like a vape pen like 12 times, and then be like, man, I can't fuck with white bitches because they won't let you beat on them, but black bitches let you, like, you can give them CTE.
Didn't The Simpsons make fun of this like 20 years ago? Like, white people drive their cars like this. Black people drive their cars like
it's such a thing. And like, I mean, like these are the people that like a dude like Joe Rogan props up, is people who do that, but it's like more crude, and that's what like David Lucas's whole set was. Is just like, it's not funny, it's just like offensive. And like that's his whole thing. It's just like, man, I would have shot George Floyd myself. But it wasn't a joke. It was just like, oh, this is offensive. And then when people are like, this isn't funny, and it's just like cringe, and they're leaving, it's like, they can't handle my, I'm uncancelable, they can't handle my humor. And it's like, no, dude, it was funny when other people did it because it was like, it was edgy, but it was also a joke. You're not saying jokes. You're just saying like cringe shit, and then expecting people to laugh because it's like edgy. And it's like, it's not, like, number one, your audience, like, they have to probably be over 21 to come in here, and a lot of them are dumb as fuck, but still, like, they're not 13-year-olds. And also, like, there has to be a joke in there, and it's not 1991 anymore where you can just be like, I choked a bitch. Because you can't say that on television. Yeah, and it's so fucking lame. Like, it's so incredibly lame. But I mean, I guess that's the comedy mothership. That's the new anti-woke comedy thing. It's just like, you just say like shitty, gross stuff, and that's funny. That's comedy, I guess. Because if that's comedy, give me a fucking Netflix special. I'll just say, like, I'll just read the Wikipedia article for racial slurs, and just maybe one of these is gonna make you mad, and I'll just read down the list, and you can give me $1 million, and I'll just stand on stage just saying them down the list.
I tried to email Netflix recently about this show idea I had, where I get on stage and just read like a long list of names of senators, and they didn't like it. They didn't get the joke. I guess I'm being censored by legacy media.
Yeah. See, that's a problem. Comedy's dead. Comedy's
comedy is not legal anymore, unfortunately.
But the left wants to make it illegal. You can't just say racial slurs and get $1 million anymore. That fucking sucks.
Yeah, I can't just read a list of senators' names and say people maybe should think about it. But I think part of the thing, right? I'm not some kind of like master jokesmith or whatever. I'm not some kind of genius philosopher, king, comedian. One, because I'm a woman, and women aren't funny, I guess. I don't know. People have said this my whole life. So I guess it must be true. Yeah. But I feel like part of the thing that makes jokes funny is that, like, if you say them over and over again, it stops being funny, right? It's like it's funny the first time,
Yep.
and maybe it's funny a few times after that, but like less so, and then it just stops being funny. And the thing is, like, when people say the same thing over and over again, and you see this a lot with like, okay, oh, you can't say this anymore. Oh, the woke SJWs. Oh, does anybody else attack helicopter? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it's not funny. It's not even that it's offensive. I have no problem with offensive humor. There's a lot of jokes I like, that we make on the show that I think are probably pretty offensive to certain people.
Sure.
But it's like, you guys aren't funny just because we've been hearing the same shit over and over and over again. I get some shit from people on the internet because, like, okay, I think the trans puppy girl, oh, I play Fallout New Vegas, I think it's kind of fucking annoying because I'm sick of hearing this joke every fucking week on my timeline. It's not that I have anything against these people. Like, go enjoy the things you like. Go express yourself however you want. I don't care if other people think it's cringe. Maybe I think it's cringe. It doesn't matter. Live your life however you like. But like, I'm so sick of just seeing the same thing all the fucking time. So yeah, it's kind of annoying. It's kind of not funny anymore, and I'm kind of tired of hearing it. Whether it's like tired fucking r/196 like shit posts or whatever, or like, oh, look at this really funny person on Twitter, blah blah blah. I'm sick of it.
Say the line, Bart. Say the line, Bart.
Say the line,
Say
Bart.
the line,
Yeah.
Bart. It's real.
Yeah.
Like that's how. And we'll talk about this at a later date. But just to tease,
stay tuned.
Just
yes.
to tease a future episode. That's how I feel about Twitter comedians who like they blow up from some real hilarious zinger shower thought that they put out there in the world, and everybody's like, oh, relatable.
This person's so funny and talented.
Yeah, and then they make a whole like fucking cringe career out of it. That's really on your previous point, and again to bring it back to my experiences teaching kids, who some of them, by the way, were genuinely funny, and I thought like a lot of these kids were very charming and clever. And then again, on top of the one archetype of the kid who like rubs his belly on the table and just shouts, and that's the pay attention to me humor. There's the one who says something like tangentially funny and gets a chuckle, and then just keeps repeating it over and over, and it's just like, oh, okay, stop. That was funny the first time. Now it's not funny the 20th time. Nobody's laughing. Stop saying it. It's the same thing. It's just like, man, it's so absurd that I'm drawing analogies to people who are getting Netflix specials and who have like quote unquote successful comedy careers and our media personalities who are the equivalent of like a 13-year-old who like needs attention. It's a bit concerning, honestly.
Yeah, it just, I don't know. At the end of the day, I look at people like Joe Rogan or Jerry Seinfeld or any of these like dipshit whatever washed up comedians, and like they form kind of like a media class, right? Like a class of people that like has its own interests, and like they work to make sure each other keep getting their own gigs. They invite each other onto everybody else's like podcasts or whatever.
Yep.
And like they have like basically a never ending funnel of like attention and jobs to do and whatever. It's a jobs program for people who already succeeded at something like 20 years ago, and they don't want to let go of it.
They're let into the club. They're let into the club.
Yeah.
And this is the same shit you see in fucking LA and everything, which is why you see the same people in every fucking Netflix show, in every fucking Hollywood movie, and everything. Once in a while, they'll let a new person into the fold, but it's for the most part, it's the same people recycled over and over again because they got let into the club. They'll keep sniffing each other's farts until somebody, maybe does something that somebody doesn't like, and then they get let go.
Yeah, and by something somebody doesn't like, you mean something that threatens the broader club or clique or whatever as a whole. We're gonna be talking a lot about media classes, because I don't think it's limited necessarily to the rich and famous. But
not at all.
We'll save that for future episodes. we'll talk about some different media classes, if you will, and I think I should maybe specify this is not an anti-Semitism thing. Calm down, okay?
No. This is we've been teasing a lot about a new arc that we're going to be exploring at length. Across a lot of the episodes that are going to be, this is truly the new season of Super Despair World. It's gonna be.
I got that dog in me, and it's ready to start biting some people.
Yeah, you know what? I'm fully on board, and I really like where this is going. It's gonna be raw and uncensored and uncut, and you're never gonna have heard anything like this before, because we're about to turn the media landscape on its head, everybody. So tune in or get fucking
get canceled.
Get canceled.
Hashtag dark woke.
Yeah. This is dark woke, but just it's just dark without woke.
Yeah. Well, it's dark woke and maybe dark sleep too. I don't know. We're gonna knock some people out figuratively in the marketplace of ideas. I think we've said everything that there is to say about Joe Rogan, and this I think this is a good little introductory episode to talk about classes of people in the media, people who kind of look out for their own interests because they have a successful career going, they have a good thing going, and maybe they have a bit of an ego, and maybe they're fucking it up now. And I think today will be valuable studying for episodes to come, so look forward to it.
Episode 59 is going to be the historians who look back on the lore of Super Despair World are going to look at this one, and the children will be studying this in their history textbooks in the woke future. And that's gonna be great. I
think back to this shit post that I saw a long time ago where it had a picture of like Bob the Builder or something, and the text over it was like, "That's where it all started. The darkness, the vitriol." I remember watching Bob the Builder, and I said, "No, we can't." That's this episode. I am tapping into the darkness, and I'm ready to start the hater arc, and we're gonna talk about some very, you could say, less famous people next episode, but just think about it. Anyway, let's give a thanks to our patrons, some people who have absolutely nothing to learn because they've already figured out the secrets of life.
Fuck yeah. All right. And no particular order, and we have some patrons which we love. We got Protagon, Patty, Brina, Woke Baby, Trevor, Stilson, Heresy, Nilly, Weasel, Walker, Clam, Trash Bins, and Nick. Oh my goodness. Well, y'all are cool. Everybody else sucks.
Thanks so much for funding the only good podcast. I mean this sincerely now. I've thought about it. It was a joke at first. I really mean it this time. We're the only good one. Thank you for letting us exist.
Yeah, you're on the ground floor of the anti-podcast movement. And it starts with us. If we let anybody into the comedy mothership of the anti-podcast, well, we'll listen to your complaints or blessings, because y'all were in here on the ground floor, so that's cool.
Comedy mothership, are you listening? We're gonna be like the fucking ending of Independence Day. That's what I think of the fucking mothership up there.
Yeah, I'm gonna be that drunken farmer who just flies that fighter jet right into the thing. Sorry, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the 1998 movie Independence Day. Definitely check that out first.
Very, very, very timely and relevant.
Up yours,
right
podcaster assholes. No, Dad.
No, Dad.
Hey,
all right, that's it.
Your dad was a hero.
All right. The only real heroes out there are our patrons. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Fuck yeah. Good fight. Good night.